Hello everyone, this is Kenny Bruni and welcome back. So this is going to be the second part of our lab for SENG 207 Programming for Engineers. And in this particular video, we are going to continue from where we left off with strings. So as you can currently see, we're on chapter 7. Alright, so in the first video, we looked at some few things over here. And now let's move on. So now we have what we call a function over here. And the name of this function is len. So over here, I'm saying, and I'm reading from line 15, that the len function returns the length of the variable. Okay, I think I need to say something like the number of elements, or let's say characters. All right. So we know that every variable, for instance, school, and if I say University of Ghana, as you have it this way, we'll have a number of elements or a number of characters in here, and we can count. So the len is actually going to count it for us. So what I can do is I can say len and pass in school over here. But in order for this to show up, because definitely when I run this, you don't get to see anything over here. And that's because we need to print this out. So I'll wrap this up in a print function. And now when I save this and run this, we do get 19 printed out over here because we have 19 number of characters in here. And that includes the white spaces. Now, if you remember in the previous video, when we were checking the index of the University of Ghana, the last index was 18, and that was because the indexing starts counting from 0. But in the case of len, it starts counting from 1. So definitely we have 19 characters over here. So let me just comment these ones out. And before we move on to the methods, let me also make mention of the fact that we are going to cover into details methods and functions when we get to, for instance, in chapter 7 and then in chapter 18, where we look at functions and classes. And that's going to be the basis for object-oriented programming. Now, what we have over here is we have methods. Now, methods and functions are the same, but then they assume different names and a different scope. And let me explain. So let's imagine I have a family member in the class. Let's say the relationship between that person and I is, maybe that person is my uncle because that's my mother's brother. Now in class, because I am the lecturer and that person is a student, when we come to school, the relationship then has to be a lecturer-student relationship. That person becomes my uncle technically when we go home. So basically, the point is, under different jurisdiction, we'll have different relationships, but then it doesn't change the fact that that person is my mother's brother or stuff like that. And we are going to see as we move along. So over here, we are going to look at strange methods. So now the first one we have over here is capitalize, and it says it converts the first character to uppercase. So now let's have a variable school, and over here I'm going to say University of Ghana. And I'm doing this on purpose because I have university as lowercase, and we are going to apply the capitalize method on this strange variable we have over here to see if it actually converts the first character to uppercase. So over here, this is what I can do. I can say school dot, and whenever I do a dot over here, later on when we get to object-oriented programming, we are going to understand a lot of these things. But now let's just assume that these methods give whichever value you want to apply them to some functionality. Okay, so for instance, we want to apply the capitalize method over here, and in order to call this method, I need to bring the parentheses over here. All right, now in order to also show this to the terminal, I need to print this. So I'll wrap this up in a print statement. So now when I save this and run this, I do get University of Ghana. but then pay attention over here. The U gets converted to uppercase, and that's because I'm using the capitalized method on the variable school, which is a string. Now, if I go back to just printing school as we have it over here and run this, we do get University of Ghana, and the U is lowercase as presented in the original variable. But then if I do a dot capitalize and bring this over here, you clearly see that this returns a literal, literal string, and that's exactly what you see over here. And it says return a capitalized version of the string. So now when I run this, we do get this. Now, there are some temptations over here. You may forget to bring the parentheses after the method, and when you do so, you are definitely going to get something, but not exactly what you are looking for. So over here, you see that it prints out something, and it says built-in method capitalized or string object at. And later we are going to explain some of these things, but this is basically a memory location where the string objects, which is University of Ghana, is being stored. So if you see something like this, don't get scared. It's just telling you that, well, maybe you forgot to bring your parentheses, for which reason this is what is calling that functionality. So clearly we have this. So now let's move on to see the other methods over here. And now let's come to what we have over here as count. So this count returns the number of times a specified character occurs in a string. So now let's look at this. Now, let me first of all bring in the print, and inside of print, I'll say school dots, and I'll put in count over here. Then I'll bring in the parentheses. Now this takes in a parameter, and that parameter can be a string or maybe a substring. And what it does is it's actually going to count the number of times that character appears in the string or substring. So over here, I'm going to say I want to count, and just by looking at this, we have, let's say, for instance, 2 A's in this entire string. So let's say we want to count A. Now when I save this, and first of all, let me hover around this, and you can see that it returns this arrow over here. It returns an int. So it is definitely going to count the number of times, and that value that is being returned is an int. So after saving this, if I run this, clearly we see 2 printed out over here because there are 2 number of A's inside of what we see over here. Let's try printing, for instance, U. And if your guess is as good as mine, we do get 1 U. But then let's do a capital U. And now when I run this, it tells me that we have 0 number of capital U's over here. Remember, Python is case sensitive. So the small letter U and the capital letter U are completely different as far as Python knows it. Now, if I leave it blank this way, this is a white space, and it is indeed also a character. And you could see that we have 2 here because there's 1 blank space over here and there's another blank space over here. So now what if I don't put up any value in here, and when we run this, you clearly see that it says a count, takes in at least 1 argument, and 0 was given. So definitely there's a prompt for us to know that we at least need to pass in a character over here. Now it is not only just a character. Let's say I can bring in off, and when I say off, this now becomes like part of the string. So this is more or less a substring. Now when I run this, I do get 1 off over here. So let's say I say University of Ghana in Ghana, like this. And now if I want to check the number of Ghana or Ghanas I have over here, when I run this, we do get 2 over here. And even if it is GH, it will actually count the number of GHs, as it appears together in this particular string. So this is what we have with the count method. So let me just comment these ones out and bring in a space over here so that our code becomes visible and readable. Now let's look at the next one. We have the count method, the find method. So let me also have in here University of Ghana. And over here, the find method searches the string for a specified value and returns the position or the index where it was first found. So now there are 2 ways of doing this, and let me just bring this. So let me cut this and put this over here because of what I want to explain. So there's the index method and there's the find method. Now basically they do the same thing, but then in different ways. Both of them are going to find you something. So now if I'm to do, for instance, let's say school.find, and what do I want to find? So I need to pass in a string or a substring, and what I want to find is, for instance, the letter capital U. So let me wrap this up in a print statement. So I want to print school.find. So find me the index of U. That's basically what I'm trying to do. So now when I run this, the index of U is 0 because that's the first index. What about the index of N? If your guess is as good as mine, this is very easy to count. We see 1 over here. All right. Now what about the index of A? Remember, we have 2 A's over here. Or first of all, let me even do I. We have 2 I's over here. The first one is at index 2 because this is, U is 0, N is 1, and I is 2. And the next one is at index, so this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Now, if I run this, we do get index 2 over here. It actually returns the first index it sees. So now this is looking good, but I want you to pay attention to something over here. If I do small letter U, remember you don't have small letter U showing up over here. Now when I run this, we do get index -1. And let me once again do something like Ken. We don't have Ken inside of this substring. So when I run this, we do get index -1. So if we do capital letter U, we get index 0 because that's what we have over here. Now let me show you what we can do with the index method. So once again, let me just do school.index, and over here I need to specify a substring or a string. So now when I do capital letter U and decide to print this out, of course we do get the same results as it was when we were using find. And also if I do, for instance, N, the N is going to be the first index or index number 1. I, the first instance of I appears at index number 2, and we can go on and on. But let's say I do small letter U. Remember when I was using find, small letter U will give me a -1. So let me just comment this one out and come back to this. So small letter U will give me a -1 because it doesn't find this inside of the string I'm trying to search through. Now if I do the same thing over here with the index method, we do get an error over here, and it says value error, substring not found. So basically this is what I want to point out. The find and the index method literally does the same thing, but in the case of if you decide to use index, then you need to make sure that everything is exactly what you are trying to find over there, or trying to search through the index method over there. So this is a little bit strict in terms of how it operates the index, and the find method is a little bit lenient because if you are trying to write a code, you can probably bring in some logic that if the return value is -1, then maybe you can print or you can output some kind of something to the user to tell the user that, well, what you are trying to find wasn't, what you are trying to search wasn't found in that particular string, and that will make a lot of sense other than returning this error, because this error will eventually break your code. All right, so now let's come back here. Let me just cut this variable and put it over here to see the other methods we have here. And the next one we are going to look at is the replace method. So the replace method replaces a specified value with another, and that's an interesting one. So when I do school.replace and select replace over here, you can see that we can pass in an old literal string, and it has to be something in here, and we will then replace it with a new one. So for instance, I can do something like I want to replace Ghana, and I'll do a comma. You can see that the highlight now changes to what we have over here as a new literal string. So I want to replace Ghana with Cape Coast. So I'll save this, and now I'll wrap this up in a print function. So I'll do a print, and I'll need to bring this over here. Now let me clear my terminal, and now when I run this, we do get University of Cape Coast because now we have replaced Ghana with Cape Coast. Good. Now let me see, we have, or if we are trying to replace something that does not exist, so let's say University of Nigeria. If I do something like this, remember Nigeria does not exist in the original string. Okay, so I'm trying to say school.replace and replace Nigeria with Cape Coast. Now something interesting is going to happen. When I run this, we still get University of Ghana being printed out over here. So these are some of the things you should know. If you are trying to replace and whatever thing you are trying to replace does not exist, then the original string will be printed out. But then if it indeed exists, then that change will indeed happen. So now look over here. We can actually, for instance, replace NA. And this NA only appears in Ghana, okay? And I can now replace this with an empty string. So now we are going to get something like University of Ga with no NA attached to it. So that's exactly what we have over here. But you normally see replace being replaced with, let's say, a full-blown string or something like that. So this is looking good. Now if your guess is as good as mine, these are some of the functionalities you see with some applications. So for instance, you can search for a particular text and you want to replace something with another string value, and you could see that the replace method is giving you that functionality. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. These methods are there and you can use them. So now let me just comment this one out, and once again let me cut this and put this over here for the next example. Now I want to look at the lower method. So the lower method converts a string into lowercase, and let's say we have this variable school. So if I apply the lower method on school, remember we don't pass in any value over here. Okay, so it says returns a copy of the string converted to lowercase, and you could see that the return value over here is a string literal. So in here I can do a print to actually output this on the terminal, and now when I run this, we do get University of Ghana in lowercase. So clearly everything over here, remember the original University of Ghana had this U as uppercase and also G as uppercase. But then when we applied the lower method, it actually converts everything into lowercase. All right. So now let me comment this one out, and now let's look at the uppercase. So clearly the names are quite intuitive over here, and you can guess what the uppercase is, or the upper method is going to do. So that's basically the opposite of the lowercase. And now let me print this one out, and if I'm to check this, this is going to convert everything to uppercase. So now when I run this, yes, we do get University of Ghana being printed out in uppercase. So let me just comment this one out, and now let's look at another example we have over here, and this is we using the is all num method. So the is all num returns true. So this actually returns a boolean. So it returns true if all characters in the string are alphanumeric. And please pay attention over here, this is alphanumeric. So it only returns true if all the characters in there are either alphabets or numeric values. So now let's look at something over here. Let's say we have a variable called password. We are writing a code and we expect our user to type in alphanumeric characters. So let's say I have a password like Ken123, which is a very bad password anyway, but let's assume this is my password. Now inside of our programming logic, we want to check if whatever password the user is inputting is alphanumeric. Clearly this is alphanumeric because KEN has alphabet characters in here and 123 is numeric. So if this is this, then it is going to return true. So now if I'm to do something like password, the variable I have over here dot is alphanum, as I have it over here and bring in a parenthesis, you could see that the return, this arrow over here shows that it is going to return a boolean, which we represent as bool. So you say return true if the string is alphanumeric string, then false otherwise. So like I said, these are some of the reasons why you need an IDE like VS Code, because all these lookup will be provided for you. And you say a string is alphanumeric if all characters in a string are alphanumeric and there's at least one character in a string. So now let's print this out and see exactly what the whole thing looks like. So now if I'm to do this and save this and run this, we see true being printed out over here. And it doesn't really matter. Let me try and do this. So this is Ken, just alphabet over here, and we do get a true. If it is only 1 2 3 2, we do get a true. Good. Now let me try and do this because this is very interesting. Now let's say I bring in a white space. A white space is not alphanumeric, or a white space as in a character itself is neither a character as far as alphabets are concerned, and not also numeric value. So now when I do this, we do get a false over here. And now when I say 1 2 3 space Ken, we do get a false. But then immediately I take away the space, we do get a true over here, because 1 2 3 Ken is alphanumeric, and this alphanumeric does not also accept these special characters. So for instance, if I bring special characters over here, we do get a false over here. So clearly this is, or these are some of the things you can use to check for password. So definitely you can actually invert this to say that, okay, now you would want a situation where the user, at least for the password the user will provide, in order for it to be a very strong password, it should contain numeric values, it should contain characters, and it should contain special characters like we have over here. And this is kind of, I mean, okay, as compared to just Ken 1 2 3. There's 1 2 3 Ken and an exclamation mark and also an @ This a little bit better in terms of the password strength than the other ones. So if this is false in terms of you checking if it is alphanumeric, then you know that, okay, this is really a strong password because it has other characters in there. So that's just by way of information. Now let's look at another one, and let me once again just cut this and bring this up over here. And now we are going to look at is digits, and this is digit method returns true if all characters in a string are digits. So you can see that some of these things are quite intuitive. You can actually, I mean, you can literally read the name of the method and kind of assume what it does. So now let's look at something over here. Now let's see, we have password dot is digits, and I'll call this, and you see that it returns a boolean over here, and you can spend time to read everything you have in here. So now let me wrap this up in a print function. And now let me just ask you, before I even print it out, is this going to return true or false? The question you need to ask yourself is digit returns true if all characters in a string are digits? Currently, not all the characters over here as digits, because we have Ken and we have these special characters showing up over here. So now when I run this, we do get a false over here. And if I take the special characters off and run this, we also get a false. Now if I bring the special characters and clear the alpha characters and run this, we also get a false over here. It is only going to return true if all the digits are numeric values. So if it is 0, I mean as many as we have over here, it is going to return true. So these are some of the things we can check. For instance, if we are building a system and the user is supposed to type in a pin, and normally pin values are like 4 digits or 5 digits depending on how the system is trying to operate. So if it is numeric values, or if the pin is supposed to be numeric values, then we can actually use this method is digit to actually validate that, and that's going to be an interesting one. So let's look at another one over here where we have a space, and let me just cut this because I still want to use this password variable over here. So the space method returns true if all characters in a string are white spaces. So let me try and do this. So let's say we have password dot a space, and you could see that it returns a boolean. So returns true if the string is a white space string, false otherwise. A string is white space if all characters in a string are white spaces and there's at least one character in the string. So we could see that everything over here will make sense if we actually try with examples. So I'll put this up in a print function, and now when I run this, we do get a false over here because nothing is white space over here. Now if I bring a white space after 2, it is still going to tell me false because it says all the characters must be white space. So now let me just clear everything I have over here, and now I do have a white space. Now this is going to tell me this is a true. If I increase the number of white spaces as I have over here and run this, it is still going to tell me that this is true because all the characters are white spaces. Now let me try and do this where we don't have any white space, and now when I run this, it is telling me that this is false because once again it says that a string is white space if all characters in a string are white spaces and there is at least one character in the string. So this at least condition needs to be met. So at least if there's one character, then there's a white space string. If else, then it is not exactly how we intend it to be. So this is looking good. Now let me just comment this one out and also comment this out. And now let's look at the split method. So with the split method, let's say we have, and once again, let me go back to school. So for school, I'm going to say University of Ghana. And now this is what the split method does. So the split method will split, okay, it splits a string, okay, at a specified separator and returns a list. So now this is the string, okay, and we would want to split this. Normally you see the split method used quite a lot because it does something very interesting over here. Now it is actually going to split this by a specified separator. So what you normally see people do, which we are going to discuss extensively when we start building our desktop applications, is the fact that we can actually, if for instance we want to count the number of words, in this, you can see that in a sentence what separates words are the white spaces. So you can actually split using the white space, and this is what I mean. I can say school.split, and in here I'm going to split by the white space. So you can see that there's a white space over here. So now if I decide to print this out, remember I said this is going to return a list. So when I run this, you clearly see that we have this square brackets around University of Ghana over here. So now later on in the course of this video, we are definitely going to discuss extensively what these lists are in the 12th chapter we have over here. So we are going to look at Python list. But for now, let's just know that the splits and whichever separator we specify over here is definitely going to split the string in here into a list, and this is what we refer to as a list. All right, now we can actually do a number of interesting things over here, and let me show you. Now that we have this, I mean, it's not just for the sake of we just splitting things. Perhaps maybe we want to count the number of words inside of this, and as I already stated, if you have a statement, the words are separated by the white spaces. So in this case, we can get these words into each string. Okay, so remember, you could see that what we have over here, there's one string, there's one string, and there's one string, and they've all been bundled together into what we refer to as a list. So now that we have this splitted out, but then this is what I want to do. I just want to, for instance, do a len, and now what I have in here is I want to print the length of this school.split over here. So now when I run this, we do get 3 instead of the actual list over here. Now this may look a little bit confusing, and I actually don't prefer doing things this way. I prefer using a more systematic approach so that anyone reading your code will then understand. So let me just comment everything I have over here. So let's say I have a variable called message, and message is what I have over here is University of Ghana is Ghana's premier university. So clearly you could see that we are running into some problems over here, and that's because of this apostrophe s. And remember what we discussed earlier. So what we can do is we can put this up in a double quote at the beginning so that it will be able to accommodate what we have over here. Now this is a statement, and we want to count the number of words in this statement. So if your guess is as good as mine, we are definitely going to split, and we are going to use the len function. But this is what I want us to do. So we can have in a variable called words, and our words is now going to be equal to this message variable we have over here dot split, and I want to split by the white space. So this, the character I need to put over here is a white space. Now I can do something like word underscore count, and word count is now going to be the length of these words. And now what I want to do is I want to print out, for instance, the words over here, and I would also want to print out the word count. So you could see that this program is very simple and it's very easy to read based on the knowledge we have so far. So first of all, there's a message over here. Then you want to say the words. So the message dot split, and you are splitting by this white space. So that's going to give us the words. And we would want a word count, and you are just applying the len method or function over here on words to actually count. And now we are printing the words. We just want to see the words being printed out and also the count. So now when I run this, we could see that on line 61 we have the words being printed out over here in the list. Then we have 7 as the total number of words, and you could see that it's very simple. We just applied some few things over here, and that's looking good. Now I made mention of the fact that we can chain some of these things we have over here, and let me just show you a typical example of we chaining the methods. And when I say chaining methods, I mean we can actually combine 2 or more methods to get there. And let me look at a typical use case where we have for instance, let's say we have, yes, we want to replace. So let's look at the replace method over here. So let me just cut this and bring this over here, and let me uncomment this. And I remember we were replacing Ghana with, for instance, Cape Coast. So over here we have we want to replace the Ghana we have in school with Cape Coast. So now when I run this, we do get University of Cape Coast over here. Now this is what I mean by we chaining it. We can actually also apply another method, and now that we know what upper and lower methods are, now let's say I can do dot, and if I do dot upper like this and bring in the parentheses over here and save, we are not just going to see University of Cape Coast, because the first part of our method is replacing Ghana with Cape Coast, and the second part of our method, because we are chaining it together, is now going to capitalize everything we have over here. So now when I run this, we do get University of Cape Coast capitalized. So first of all, the replacement was done, and now we've capitalized it. We can chain a number of these as and when they become necessary. So I'll comment this out and we'll make progress. So now let's look at the last things over here, and that's with the start with and end with methods. So the start with returns true if the string starts with a specified value, and of course if your guess is as good as mine, the ends with will return true if the string ends with a specified value. So let's say we have a variable called school. We've been using school from the beginning. So let's say we have University of Ghana, and I can now do school dot, first of all let me say starts with, So I'll put in a string over here, and if I say start with U, and now try and print this out as I have it over here, it is definitely going to return a true because the string I have over here starts with a U. What if a small letter U? Remember, Python is case sensitive, so in this case it is telling me this false. What about I say university and save this? If I run this, we do get a true over here. Good. Now let's look at the end width. And this end width, you normally see it being used a lot. So let's say we have a variable called file name. So file name is going to be equal to code.py. Now let me try and see file name dot end width, and inside of this I'll see a .py extension. So now if I'm to print this out and save this and run this, we do get a true over here. So this file name actually ends with a code.py, or a .py extension. If the original file is a .html, if I run this, we do get a false over here. Okay, and it doesn't really matter if it is HTML and not a .html. So now when I run this, we still get a true over here, and if it is a .html, it still makes sense over here. All right, now these are some of the things that we do to actually check if, let's say, within a particular directory or a folder contains a particular file. And we are going to look at some of these things as we move along, but for now we are going to end it here. It's good we know this, but later on when we go through loops, we can actually go through a file system, loop through whatever things we have in there, and actually make good use of trying to identify files and things like that. And that's actually going to help us do some little bit of automation as we move along. Now thank you very much. Now this is going to be the end of this video. This was quite long because we needed to learn some few things. Now if you find value in this whole tutorial session, don't forget to subscribe and click on the like button. Share with friends and family who find this content very useful, and please code along and learn. Try with your own examples, and whenever you have questions, don't forget to leave them in the comment section. And for my students, we'll meet in class and discuss some of these things extensively. Thank you very much, and bye bye.